Hey, all, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Work schedule, gig schedule, and well, basically that and the weather have held me back from the water this week. But I still have some leftover bluegill, so I'm actually going to prep those right now. And this is basically for you guys that don't care for bony fish. There's a way to work around that. We're basically going to process all that bluegill meat, pull all the bones out, and use it for something special. And you better be watching this one because I'm giving away my grandma's old stuffing recipe, and it's going to be amazing. I'm Jake Workmeister, and I also love cooking with fish after I am done fishing. I love doing that too. This is the way you wash your hands. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, be using an air fryer today. We're just going to line the bottom of that with foil. And a couple reasons for this. One, first and foremost, yes, it does cut down on the air circulation. I do understand that. Of the air fryer. It's not that big of a deal in this case, and basically what I want to do is have an easier cleanup, and it also traps in the fish oil as well as the butter and the seasonings a little bit better. So that's that. In fact, when I've cooked with trout, I do the same method, and using the tinfoil just makes everything work out a little bit better. Next, I'll spray just a little bit of canola oil down. Not much, just to prevent the fish from sticking. Next, my frozen bluegill. By the way, thawed this overnight a little bit. It's still pretty frozen. Cooling down a little bit though, or warming up, I guess. Still frosty, but not rock solid. And once again, be careful because these things could stab you every bit as good as when they were alive. In fact, I stabbed myself. They poked through the bag and got stabbed by one of the fins as I was moving it from the freezer to the refrigerator. Tried getting me right there, even in death. The bluegill will stab. A couple of these will be overlapping a bit. That's no big deal. They're so thin it's not going to mess with the cooking time. At least it shouldn't. Speaking of cooking time, generally what I do with frozen fish, it's not that, I slice off these pieces. I just hit the fish button on the air fryer. But ultimately what you're trying to do is get it up to at least 145 degrees. Or in this case, I'm probably going to go a little bit beyond that, probably around 165 or so, enough where the meat is actually just falling off the bone. I'm washing my hands in between steps here because you do not want to cross-contaminate. Let's see if we can get a good shot inside here. Okay, so basically I'm using two things to season these fish. Old Bay, lemon pepper. All I'm doing is shaking on one side of them pretty liberally. Those little loose particles, well, that's going to help us with the second half. Because, once again, these are back on the spice rack. I'm not touching them again. Cross-contamination, serve safe. Always keep this stuff in mind. I just mix them around, making sure both sides get somewhat well seasoned. It's going to be, basically in this case, it's just an enhancement to the meat. We'll be adding those flavors into our stuffing mix. What I'm doing today is creating a little fish stuffing ball. So kind of like a crab cake, if you ever have one of those. Pittsburghers, if you've ever been to the original oyster house. Kind of doing that. And in this case, this recipe is going to work out well for the bluegill, but you could honestly use any type of fish. In this case, bluegill is what I had, so have a little extra time before the gig. I'm going to start picking the meat, but I'm probably not going to be able to get all this done before I have to go. So I'm doing the rest of this tonight when I get back. Okay, check. Okay, and that's pretty much that. You don't have to wrap it up too tightly. I still want air getting in there. I could technically add a little butter to it. I don't think it's really necessary with these, so just let that be. Okay, so lock the tray in, turn it on, and just hit fish. Which is 400 degrees for 10 minutes. It's a good place to start. I'll temp it after that, but that should be enough. And Peaches, the cat, is down by my feet. She's all excited to that I'm cooking, as she always is.
What the man don't know is that I'm going to stand behind him and have my tail accidentally stepped on. Then he'll have no choice but to share some fish.
That's Peaches. Okay, these just popped out and are done. Well, allegedly, the timer's done. Let's confirm that. What I'm looking for are the bigger pieces. Got my cooking thermometer here, just sticking this right through. I feel it. We're at, yep, we're going up to about 155, so these are good. I just want to check one more just to be safe. Yep, we're good. So, procedure with this is pretty simple. Really simple, actually. What we're going to do, all we're going to do, pull one of these little bad boys out. Just pop off the meat with the fork, and you'll see all the bones coming out. In fact, use you. Those could all be discarded. I'm just going to pick all the meat. Leave that in a bowl by itself. You could go through a fine-tooth comb, pulling out all the bones. I know that there's, oh, the cat's excited now. There's two types of bones that you have to watch out for. Those rib bones, then in the belly, they're also there too. Then, of course, the fins. But, yeah, we're just separating the bones from the meat. This isn't going to be the quickest process in the world, but just go through, take your time, get everything out. Try not to eat them. Try not to feed your cat everything either. Just set them aside. And I'm just going to do this to each fish. In fact, I could probably just pull all the fins out outright. And fun fact, at least with, well, okay, a couple caveats here. I never renewed my certification, so the information I have from ServSafe is from years ago, but as it was back then when I took the test, I'm technically allowed to be handling processed meat like this, cooked meat, as long as the cooked meat is still going into another step where it's getting cooked somewhere else. So, FYI, just a little trivia. If anyone knows whether or not that changed, leave it in the comments down below. But I'm just going to pick all these fish over. Just do all this, just feel around for the bones, feel through the meat. And I'll be back once that's done. I'll show one of these, now that I have a little bit of a bearing of how this is going to work out. Basically split them open. You could get most of the bone off. The spine will hold most of the bone. Now what it will leave behind on the fillet is two areas, well, outside of the fins. So first things first, pop the fins off, just to get those out of the way. And on the fillet itself, the main part of the fillet leading up to the dorsal fin, you'll have all of these little rib bones. So you'll need to remove those. And that's 90% of your battle right there. And check the belly, because you also have little bones on the bottommost part of the fish. I'm trying to leave as much of the skin on, because the skin contains fat, the fat contains flavor. But just feel around it a couple times, and you'll see any remaining bones just kind of popping out there. So just keep doing that. And here's what we ended up with. I was averaging about less than 2 minutes per bluegill. And the thing, actually, I was surprised. I was expecting I'd need the fork more than I actually did. I'm just going through here, double checking to make sure nothing got by, which these actually look really good. Pretty confident in my work here. Awesome fishing, bone picking. But one thing that caught me off guard, the larger fish were actually more difficult to pull out all the bones than the smaller fish. What was happening with the smaller fish, the bones are so clumped up together, when I was just rubbing it with my thumb, all the rib bones just want to shoot out at once. Whereas when they're more spread out with the larger fish, some of them will want to stick. And that's where I was rinsing my hand off, keeping the fish oil off. So it made them a little bit easier to handle. But this is what we ended up with 12 fish, more or less. Peaches and I indulged ourselves a little bit. And by no means is this the, have another piece.
You better share that now.
By no means is this the easiest fish to process. I'll tell you what, bluegill pound for pound might be the tastiest of all the freshwater fish. If you've never had it, you're doing yourself a disservice. So be careful with the bones, and you're going to have one heck of a good meal. So unfortunately, I have to get to my Tuesday night gig, so I can't finish this right now. But what I'm going to do is just take a little saran wrap, wrap that bowl up, stick it in the refrigerator, then we'll continue this when I get home. Okay, and we're back. And ingredients here are pretty straightforward. It's just a simple wheat bread bought at our local Dollar Tree. 1 yellow onion. I'll peel and chop the whole thing for the bowl. Found these baby carrots. They're actually the rainbow color ones, and each one has its own distinct little flavor. The red ones are closer to a radish. The yellow ones are a little bit more mild. They're interesting, but any type of carrot would work. Standard carrots, baby carrots. I kind of like the baby carrots because it's just a standard carrot scraped down and cut to this size, but gets a lot of that bitter skin off, and they're just a little bit sweeter, easier to work with. And some celery. So we're going to mix those three together. So just a quick note, I'm actually not going to blanch these vegetables. The onions will cook right down, and the carrots are minced down fine enough where they'll cook down too. The only thing that will have any residual crunch will be the celery, and for a fish-based stuffing ball like this, I actually want that. For a standard stuffing, I would probably blanch everything down, soften it all up, but in this case, I want that crunch. Okay, next step is to simply break the bread. All you're doing is taking each slice, ripping it apart with your bare hands, and throwing in little chunks. And ultimately, this style of this is a very classic style of stuffing. It's basically designed to use whatever leftovers you had around, and I love it. No matter what type of bread you use, it just seems to work really well. And we're also going to add chicken broth to this. And Peaches wants more food because Now she has a taste for what I'm doing here. But yeah, this almost makes it like if you've ever had a bread pudding as a dessert, this is kind of like the dinner equivalent. And the one big thing I'm not going to be using in this recipe is thyme. Usually, what you do, I'll add 2 eggs to this whole as a binding agent. Add chicken broth, salt, pepper, and thyme. I'm altering that recipe somewhat. And by the way, there's your Thanksgiving Day stuffing right there. Take notes on that. Repeat it as many times as you need to. You'll love that recipe. It's absolutely amazing. But I'm omitting the thyme basically because it's going to be overbearing for what I'm doing here. So what I will be using instead, Peach is whining some more. What I'll be using instead is the same lemon, pepper, and Old Bay seasoning that I used when seasoning the fish, and they're going to complement each other. But yeah, once again, if I were doing this recipe, seasonings you use: salt, pepper, thyme. Season it to your particular taste. Absolutely amazing. Oh yeah, there's one other thing we're going to do here. The Andes breadcrumbs that we used for the fish in the last video, we're actually going to throw a little bit of that in here with everything, and then we're going to coat the balls with that. With everything I have, we're going to use one loaf, and basically you just make this real nice and soupy with the chicken broth, your vegetables, and in this case the fish. I'm just going to get my hands in here and just mush everything up, knead everything by hand, which will break apart the onions into smaller bits and get all the veggies in there. Same package of Andes breading that we used last time. Has a Cajun kick to it. Really worked out well with the fish. So we got that. We're going to throw the fish in last. And I'm going to get everything started with the eggs and the chicken broth. By the way, if you actually make your own broth, it works even better, but for this purpose, this would be just fine. And chicken broth is your go-to with, believe it or not, fish, because it's a very flavor neutral meat, which is why you can season it to everything, or the old saying is chicken tastes like everything. So it's kind of like a starch, a potato, or a pasta in that sense, where it kind of absorbs all the flavors around it. In this case, the fish will be the dominant taste. Will overwrite the chicken taste, so the chicken just adds a nice little salty fat. Okay, add the fish. Add the fish, knock the camera around. So I was giving a lot of thought today as to how I actually want to cook these. For most of the day I want to deep fry them, but you know what? With the yield I have, I think it's actually going to be better if I oven bake them. And basically just using a cookie sheet, laying down a little canola so they don't stick. All I'm going to do, is pull a little ball out, my fish stuffing here, roll it into a ball, not that big, and we're running it in through the Andes. And I think that'll give it a nice little crispy crust. There's one other step we're going to do to these. Got the canola on one end. We're going to spray them with canola before they go into the oven. And I think fish is already cooked. I'm basically just trying to get the carrots and onions cooked up. So I'm going to do 35 minutes on 350. That should be enough. Have the oven preheating right now. But yeah, that's it. Just using the Andes, coating them. And here we are, a little yield of fish balls right here. And we're just going to spray the tops of them with canola too. That should get them to crisp up. So we're going to toss them in my preheated oven, 350 degrees for 35 minutes. That should be enough to cook everything through, stuffing in particular. And in this case, we're basically just trying to get all the onions and celery soft. So that's that. See you in a half hour. So to be honest, it's a grand experiment for me too. I'm basing the time and temperature of the oven based upon similar recipes I do with stuffing, and I have a little spinach stuffing ball that I use, and that the fish is already pre-cooked, so that's a non-issue. Basing it off the experience from that, same size as these spinach balls, and we'll talk about those some other time, but this should work out under those temps, the size of the ball and so on, so we'll see. Okay, texturally, color-wise, these look about right. I'll let them cool down for a second, and yep, they feel about right. Canola oil's allowing them to pop right off. These are exactly I felt they should feel. One thing left to do. My favorite part. Doing a suck and blow method. Prevents you from burning your mouth, but man, that was good. That's really good. So, highly recommend. This is the definitive way to eat undersized bluegill, hands down, or any other type of fish that you might have laying around. Walleye, lump crab meat, shrimp, it'll all work. Just mince it down, get it into the stuffing, roll it into a ball, and that Andy's seasoning here, it added a nice little spice. The spices were right with the Old Bay, and the lemon pepper was the perfect seasoning for this alteration from the thyme. And yeah, this is awesome. So I'm going to finish these up and try them out for yourself. I'm going to leave the recipe down below. Um, you'll notice I was kind of gauging everything by eye just because I'm kind of used to doing this. I was basing everything off the yield of the fish itself. So keep that in mind. I'm going to give an approximation since I didn't measure anything of what I was actually doing and list that in the description. So I'm going to eat these, enjoy them, and until next time, keep on fishing. Loaf.
I told him I'd get him like a fish if he wasn't sharing. This is pretty good, though. I'll kill him later.